Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. No fun. And it can be excruciating for all of us when we go through those times when we're forced to just white knuckle it, is what I call it. Sometimes we have to do it more than once in life. And for some of us, well, every 4 years or so. But there are certain skills that I believe are essential to learning to survive those times of despair. And laughter is our topic today. And I'm going to give you a little hint as to our segment, what our segment will be today for... As you know, each week I'll be reading a story to you from one of my books that I have published now. And today I'm going to be reading from my first book. It's called Tales from the Life of a Pre-Divorced Little Christian Girl. It's for sale now, so you can go to Facebook and find the Naked Truth with Alicia New fan page and click on the link at the bottom left corner and purchase the books. But here's just a little clue for what our story will be about today.
It's the Boogers!
What are you doing?
Just hanging out. Well, that's a booger for you.
So that story's on the way. I know the anticipation will kill you over the next few moments until it gets here. We've been discussing the 8 main areas in life that I believe we have to work on to get to a place of not just surviving life, but moving on to a place of thriving. Those different areas are working on yourself, your children, your work, finances, health, friends, the opposite sex, and then your life view. We've been working through several different areas of self that are essential to survival and necessary to move on to thriving over the last few weeks. We've discussed overcoming self-destructive thoughts when depression strikes during times of despair. We've looked at strategies to survive spiritually when in times of crisis. We've talked about spiritual suicide and what that means. Hope is essential to both of these areas. But once basic survival has been accomplished in life, I believe we have the building blocks in place to get to a place of thriving. And within the area of developing ourself or inner person to a place of thriving, I believe there's a subset of intricately woven parts that we can build up. The parts that I've thought of so far, and you feel free to chime in whenever you want to, but the parts I've thought of so far within ourselves that we need to learn to do are, we need to learn to laugh, we need to learn to grieve, to regroup. We need to learn to build a support system for ourselves, to know when to ask for help. We need to accept who we are. We need to forgive ourselves, respect ourselves, and then embrace those things that are in our lives. In every major tragedy that strikes in life, I believe there's an element of our souls, or that part of us that makes us sentient and uniquely human, that's torn or wounded. Some within my particular Christian circle would call it the part that's sacred. That part of us is torn or damaged when bad life happens. There's a song by Natalie Grant that hit very close to home for me when I was walking through some of my most desperate times. It's called Held, and it asks some of the elemental questions I think we all struggle with when we're despairing. The lyrics in this first clip say, "Who told us we'd be rescued? What has changed, and why should we be saved from nightmares? We're asking why this happens to us who have died to live. It's unfair. This is what it means to be held, how it feels when the sacred is torn from your life and you survive."
Who told us we'd be rescued? What has changed and why should we be saved from nightmares? We're asking why this happens to us who have died to live. It's unfair. This is what it means to be held, how it feels when the sacred is torn from your life and you survive.
I think one of the things all of us struggle with when something strikes, some tragedy strikes in our life, is the unfairness of it all. I guess we as humans feel entitled to be protected from the troubles in life somehow. But honestly, nobody's promised that, and we all will endure some type of trial in life. When divorce rocked my life, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like something sacred had been ripped apart inside of me. And truth be told, it had been. I couldn't define it at the time, but I do believe the human soul is a sacred thing that was designed and formed by God in His image. This is the part that we Christian types believe goes on to an eternal state of togetherness with the Creator. While we're here on earth, though, death, divorce, and all sorts of other trauma can rip and tear at that thing God created to be whole within us. And I survived this wrenching like many of you have survived the tragedies that have torn our souls apart at times. The song goes on to talk about the aftermath when the sacred is torn from our lives.
This hand is bitterness. We want to taste it. Let the hatred numb our sorrow. The wise hand opens slowly to lilies of the valley and tomorrow.
This hand is bitterness, it says. We want to taste it and let the hatred numb our sorrows. The wise hand opens slowly to the lilies of the valley and tomorrow. Well, opening our wise hands to tomorrow is where we're going to be focusing for the next few weeks here. Some of our hands open more slowly than others. Mine has opened quite slowly, it seems. But laughter is an important part of our emotional and physical makeup, and it's more important than most of us realize. Dr. Lee Burke in the 1980s discovered some interesting psychosomatic effects of laughter. According to ScienceDaily.com, Burke and his colleagues discovered that the anticipation of mirthful laughter had surprising and significant effects. There are two hormones, beta endorphins, which are in the family of chemicals that elevate mood state, and human growth hormone, or HGH, which you may be familiar with, which helps with optimizing immunity. They were increased 27% and 87% respectively in study subjects who anticipated watching a humorous video. There was no such increase among the control group who didn't anticipate watching the humorous film. In another study, they found that the same anticipation of mirthful laughter reduced the levels of three detrimental stress hormones: cortisol, which is the stress hormone, epinephrine, which you may know as adrenaline, and DOPAC, which is a major catabolite or the hormone that breaks down and wastes dopamine. Those were reduced by 39, 70, and 38% respectively, and that was statistically significant. Chronically released high levels of these stress hormones can be detrimental to the immune system. Now, Dr. Burke, who is a preventative care specialist and a psychoneuroimmunologist of Loma Linda University in California, was paired with an endocrinologist and diabetes specialist to examine the effects of mirthful laughter on individuals with diabetes. I found this very interesting. As many of you know, diabetes is a metabolic syndrome characterized by the risk of heart attack, blindness, and other neurological, immune, and blood vessel complications. Well, they found that mirthful laughter was a preventative adjunct therapy in diabetes care, raising good cholesterol and actually lowering inflammation. Now, that's pretty amazing stuff. It really preaches to me, in a very scientific, non-religious sort of way, that it's the expectation of laughter, what they call mirthful laughter, that bolsters good health and fights off bad health. Hope for good things to come is a powerful force in life. We've discussed my firm belief that thriving in life only comes when we're healthy emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Here we find a naturally occurring phenomenon that bolsters both emotions and physical well-being. I would dare to venture that it most likely influences your spiritual well-being too. Another interesting tidbit is that laughter is a universal language. In an attempt to find out if certain emotions are universal, researchers at the University College of London have studied whether the sounds associated with emotions such as happiness, anger, fear, sadness, disgust, and surprise are shared among different cultures. The results of their study provided further evidence that such emotions they form a basic set of developed functions that are shared by all humans. I believe these are some of the things that make humans uniquely sentient, different from all other mammals on our fair planet. Now, I have set all that up and planted the seed of anticipated laughter within you because I know you are eagerly waiting to find out what this is about.
It's the Boogers!
Hey, Benny, what are you doing?
Just hanging out. Well, that's a booger for you.
Now that I've graciously raised your beta endorphins by 27% and increased your HGH levels by 87% as you eagerly anticipate my upcoming humorous story, it is time once again for...
Oh, you guys made me eat.
This story is from my first book titled The Tales from the Life of a Pre-Divorced Little Christian Girl, which is on sale now on the Facebook fan page for The Naked Truth with Alicia New. The title of this story is Throwing Boogers. It was written somewhere around 2002 while I was still married. Here we go, throwing boogers. Admittedly, the first few years of parenthood are consumed with bodily functions. It begins even before birth. especially for the pregnant woman who feels everything pressing on everything else. Going can be quite a family celebration. The party continues after birth. Diapers are a huge part of babyhood. Easily we learn to discuss texture, color, and volume while eating supper, oftentimes never missing a bite. Hand washing becomes optional after diaper number 24,061. Might as well build up those immunities, right? I'm finding that the focus of these bodily functions changes with time. The diapers are gone from our home these days. We now have ongoing discussions about where boogers are supposed to be placed once they've been removed from the nasal cavity. Inevitably, these discussions begin with the observation of one of my children with a finger firmly planted up the nose. Hand washing seems to become less optional at those moments. A tissue is retrieved and the wayward nasal accessory is disposed of properly, when I have caught them ahead of time, that is. It's the times that I don't see them that haunt me. How many times has my hand run over a bed rail to meet a crunchy end? Who knows what horrors my carpet may hold? The other night in a dark room, my 4-year-old son and I were snuggling up on the bed to watch a video before bedtime. My husband had just walked into the room and sat on the end of the bed to chat as we settled in. Suddenly, I saw my son's hand quickly rise up and down in front of me. Then I felt a small foreign object hit my forehead. Luckily, it bounced off quickly. It took a few seconds to register the texture and consistency of that object. Then I forcefully asked, "Did you just throw a booger at me?" My husband immediately fell off the bed laughing. My son nodded his head, yes, as he too laughed. I failed to see the humor in this situation. I began exclaiming that this is not the way to deal with nasal expulsions. The laughter only escalated. Once my husband peeled himself off the floor, he tried to have a serious conversation with my son about a little company called Kleenex. I hope he made the point. Whoever knew I was signing up for this when I decided to become a mom? Not I. All the dirty diapers, sick nights, and thrown boogers don't change the love I feel when I kiss those little sweethearts goodnight, though. In fact, those kisses make it all worthwhile. All right, let's take a moment to go to break. We're discussing laughter today on The Naked Truth with Alicia New. We've been talking about the importance of anticipating laughter, having good hope for good things to come in the future.